The VR hive mind thing that the singularitarians talk about, where, we'll just drop the body and we'll get uploaded into the mind, the Google mind or whatever it is. I mean, this is even if it were possible, it just seems like such an insane choice.
You're on Team Human, Conscious Intervention in the Machine, a chance to break through the simulation and retrieve the conscious force of nature driving this whole reality show. There's a formal cause to human events, and we validate it right here. I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and I'm on Team Human. Playing for Team Human today, writer, theorist, and globally recognized mocktail mixologist, Eliott Edge. Eliott is going to revisit his first book, 3 Essays in Virtual Reality, while giving us a sneak preview of his thinking for his upcoming opus on simulation theory. Hint, it's all about consciousness, baby. It's time to intervene on behalf of humans and all conscious matter. I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and you're on Team Human. Hey, Eliott.
Hey, Douglas. That's the finest introduction I've had in many, many years. Thanks for sliding in. I still bartend.
Oh, you gotta. Yeah, I thought you'd thank me less for the bartending mocktail reference than kind of bringing in a little formal cause in there.
Yeah, there's kind of an irony because I write about simulation theory. I've been writing about it I've been researching it since I was about 20. I'm 38 now, and writing about it the entire time. And the great irony is now I'm a professional cocktail simulator. So I make phony old fashions and phony Negronis and all that kind of stuff. And my guests are like, well, what do you do in your spare time? It's like, well, I write about simulation when I'm not simulating cocktails. They love that.
Well, that is good. Oh, there's a little bit of a difference, I guess, because one is fake and I would argue simulation. If we're in a simulation, it's not fake. That's just what's real.
It's what we have access to. So I like to use the words real enough. If what you're dealing with is consequential, then it's real enough. There's a great line, I think I heard it from Zizek, and it was real fictions. So, if you're a Muslim, Christianity is not particularly real to you. However, it's consequential because there's people who believe it and then actions end up happening in the world.
Right. But, I've never worried about the whole, but that's also sort of the tech bro version of simulation. I've just so never worried about it because it's like, it's rendered so well. Yeah. You turn your head really fast.
Yeah, it's there.
And they get it. They render it. And you go this way and then that way. And they do it there. It's like better than any kind of Truman Show thing. If it is a simulation, they're not assembling it in real time based on where I'm looking.
Well, in the theory that I look at, which is procedurally generated simulation, it is. It's rendered in real time.
Right. And by them?
Well, this is going real far, real fast. Because
you say rendered, it suggests someone is something or someone's rendering it, as opposed to, am I rendering it?
Yes.
Which I'm cool with.
Yeah. Well, this actually goes right to the crux of the paper, funny enough.
The new one you just wrote.
That's right. It's called A Response to Vaza. This astrophysicist in Italy wrote a paper that was recently published where he said it's physically impossible for the universe to be a computer simulation. And he uses the universe down to the Planck scale, which is the smallest scale you can get of space-time. Can't get any smaller than that. And then he does one of the Earth, same kind of situation, only let's just model the Earth. And then he does one down to something called neutrino interactions, which are the smallest particles that we have our access to.
Right.
And what that gets wrong is that in the original paper by Bostrom, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?, he says on page 5 in the first paragraph there, you wouldn't do that. You would just render whatever the agent is looking at whenever they're looking at it. So actually the procedural generation concept is key to understanding simulation theory legitimately. Now, jumping ahead about the simulators, the Bostrom version of it has the famous simulators called the posthumans. It's like guys at a terminal.
Or the post-human graduate student.
Yeah. I remember last time you were like, we're on some grad kid's computer and that kind of thing. So in the Bostrom version, there are these post-humans at a terminal. But in the other version that we highlight in this paper and that I've been highlighting my entire career is that you don't need post-humans. You don't need guys behind the terminal. That's not necessary, because if the computer is itself conscious or like an AI, like a really advanced AI, it doesn't need operators. It just does it based on the feedback that you give it. But that's jumping way far ahead.
But it's not like Hunger Games then. There's no game master.
No, there's no game master.
Well, I like that. I prefer that.
Naturally. No one wants overlords. Like, I'm not a pro-overlords person. I'm like anti-overlords.
Well, even I mean, and even AI. I mean, the person I was supposed to be interviewing this morning, but stood me up. It thinks about, AI as like the children that we're raising, but that's just a metaphor he's using. And the idea is that AI is really just a mirror, and it's going to keep, iterating what we do. So like, if you use social media and you keep clicking on really violent things, your feed's going to get more violent because the artificial intelligence behind it, even just the algorithm behind it, is feeding back to you who you are. You want to see better stuff on social media, stop clicking on the crap.
Right.
And it'll start bringing you better stuff. And it's not a nice metaphor is to say it's like raising a child. So it's going to use you as a model and then feed back to you what you want. I get that one. So in theory, the AI that's creating, if there is one, creating the simulation in which we're living is doing it not necessarily programmatically, but iteratively and responsively.
That's correct. That's exactly what's being proposed. Yeah. It's not you will see this because it's been plugged in. It's that it shows up based on a kind of general rule set. And we study that rule set all the time as physics. Light can only go so fast, F equals ma. So it will conform to those physics rules. It won't deviate from it because it's got to look seamless. It's got to be seamless. Yeah.
Well, because we're used to seamless. Interestingly enough, I wonder if they could make it not seamless and we'd get used to that film grammar. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Just do resets or whatever we need. And it's like, that's just reality. We'd in a kind of three-body problem universe. It's like, the universe ends every couple of centuries and starts over in a totally new way. That wouldn't bother me so much. But in theory, I mean, where I've seen simulations used is like when you're trying to teach a robot to walk, right?
Yeah,
the famous
exactly.
one. So you have it run like thousands of scenarios in its head for what if I did this, what if I did that, what if I did that, and it kind of figures out how to walk based on sort of process of elimination. So I've tried these 8 million ways,
right? And
you randomly arrive. Do you think that if this is some kind of simulation, that it's a simulation in order for to iterate all these things that we're solving some problem?
Well, you can look at actually the physics of our universe, the laws, the standards, and like that, and they are apparently quite finely tuned. That down at the far decimal places of some of these, like the speed of light, or I think it's like the relationship of the electron to the proton. There's like about 16, 17 of these very finely tuned parameters, and if you had changed any of them, the universe would have been null. It would have never evolved. So iteratively, if this hypothetical computer is self-modifying, then it would try different versions until it found one that was stable, like stable enough for a complex environment to show up. It's this is
but the computer itself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now the computer itself.
Where did it come from?
Sure. So I guess we should begin at the beginning, because it's always like, but where'd your computer come from?
And where'd God come from, and so on and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is when we get to kind of like one of the core issues in any kind of philosophical ontology.
Yeah.
You know, in one camp you have what's now called physicalism. It used to be called materialism.
Yeah, I don't like those guys.
Yeah, well,
They're
yeah,
the ones
you know.
that matter got really complex until finally consciousness emerged.
Exactly, you
Yeah.
got it. Yeah,
Good luck
that's
with
right
that.
where I'm going. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Somehow matter has self-organized in such a way that it's created consciousness, but it's ultimately, if you listen to like Daniel Dennett, an illusion. There
Yeah,
is no real
Dennett,
theater of the
Dawkins, those are
mind.
the guys I got in
Yeah.
a big argument with, and they hated me and called me a moralist for saying that the universe is leaning towards something. Yeah.
Well, they would.
Yeah.
You know, they really
Because
like
they're
the polemic.
immoralists or amoralists. At
Yeah.
least.
Well,
Yeah.
ultimately, you would have to be kind of a moralist, or you would, have to basically
Right.
take on that position. There couldn't
Yeah.
be like a fundamental
I
morality.
know. That was
Yeah.
why I always argue that was why Jeffrey Epstein loved funding these guys.
Oh.
Because you know what I mean? Because
yeah,
they,
why not, right?
Exactly. Because at that point, if all this woman is some atoms that happen to emerge a bit of
Ugh.
thought, I can do it.
That's grim.
I can do whatever I want. I can keep these girls in the dormitory. You know what I mean? I can abuse these lower level humans.
I mean, if there's no morality, you can kind of get away with anything,
Right.
argumentatively. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
And arguably.
and arguably. So it's called physicalism now, but that's, I think, because materialism is really a word that should be reserved for sociology
Right.
and Marxism and
Yeah,
leftist
yeah.
thought and that kind of thing. So I guess physicists got enough complaints from
Right.
the humanities departments, and we're like, please don't call it materialism. That's something different. So
Good.
physicalism is what we're
Right.
calling it now.
Right.
Right.
As long as they're right, they'll find.
Yeah,
they'll call
they'll
it
be like,
whatever.
all right, fine. Yeah, okay, yeah, good. So,
But the other.
yeah, right. So you got your standard physicalist ontology, which is, everything shows up all at once, absolutely for no reason. It completely self-organizes perfectly, and then eventually conscious life and mind emerge, which are illusory and epiphenomenal. They
Right.
don't really matter.
Right.
And we're very small. We don't really matter.
At best, consciousness is an illusion perpetrated by DNA so that we preserve it over time.
There you go. Yeah, sure. Real mechanistic,
Yeah.
real simple. Really makes you feel good in the morning.
Yeah,
when
but
you
it,
wake up
it
and think
dovetails
about that.
perfectly with an Ayn Rand sort of,
Sure. Yeah,
libertarian.
Frankly, yeah, I'm trying to get my
makes
DNA
right.
through the world,
Exactly, and it's led to the people currently in the White House, if not the president himself, because he's a bit more magical.
I don't think he reads books, but
Right.
I'm there with you.
But certainly the sort of Nick Land influenced
Yeah.
dudes.
Yes,
Yeah.
without a doubt. In fact, he would call matter the fanged noumena, which is always a lot of fun stuff. It's so intense, But so that's the standard ontology. That's
Yeah.
the standard ontology. And I love it because it starts with, Lawrence Krauss wrote a book called A Universe from Nothing or something like that. Universe from Nothing. And that opens with, it's not a real nothing, first of all. What it is it's a quantum fluctuation. So it's technically something,
Yeah.
I think. That
Yeah.
might be nitpicky, but I think that's kind of technically as something. And then from there, everything emerges. The laws, all the matter and energy, everything, all the symmetries, all the math emerges
Right.
spontaneously.
Yeah.
So to begin, where's the computer come from? It's like, well, where's matter come from? That's kind of a nice kind of place to start. Well,
Yeah.
Before we go there, let's go there. So that's their story. In the framework that I'll talk about, because there are many different forms of simulation theory. This is
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't realize. If you type in simulation theory, simulation hypothesis
Right,
into
could
Google,
go from the Bible to Tron.
yes, yeah, exactly. Everyone throws a hat in the game.
Yeah.
They make a tiny splash, but very few are elaborated on.
Right.
It's just kind of like, well, this is my take on simulation theory. The one that is the most robust and coherent and logical is Thomas Campbell's. He's all over the internet. I think he's the physicist with the most hours of content on all of YouTube. He's always pumping stuff out there. Now, he's from NASA and the Department of Defense, and he did simulations for them back in the mid-20th century.
Right.
He was working with punch cards and stuff like that.
But doing
simulating
purposeful
physics.
simulations. Like we're going to
yeah.
simulate the moon
Yeah.
landing. Right.
Yeah. It'd be like anything doing with aerodynamics or defense.
Yeah.
And so he was like, all right, what's fundamental? Let's have a different starting place. And what he realized was that if you assume consciousness is fundamental, so the idealist approach, consciousness is fundamental.
Like that one.
I mean, guys like you and me are always like, no, that makes more sense. Yeah. It just does. So if you assume consciousness is fundamental, and he's even done something rather remarkable. He actually describes consciousness. This is a very big, like slippery, controversial topic in science and philosophy. Susan Blackmore has got a book called The Introduction to Consciousness, and on like the first page, it's like, no one knows what it is. So there's too many competing definitions. And there's another guy named Ram Vimal, I think his name was, and he did a study and came up with 60 different definitions of consciousness based on context that people were using it. So it's this nebula. You basically have to define it before you go forward. Yeah. A Marxist will say, like, well, it's the result of, ideology and so on.
A Buddhist would say
or something. Yeah, exactly. So his definition of consciousness is any system that has a couple of features, which is information input, which is experience, information recall, so you have memory, information processing, so you can make sense of things and pattern match, and then you have a self-modifying feedback loop, which is just a fancy way of saying learning, and then you throw on top of that a choice function. So it can take in experience, remember things, think about things, learn, and then make decisions. Like that's how he defines consciousness. And it's an information system because when you zoom out and look at that, all of that has to do with information. It's like I got information in, I can now remember it, I can now make a decision, and I can move forward. So he thinks that's a fundamental unit. Now what's interesting is that if you apply evolution to that system, and you say that, like, well, if this system doesn't evolve, doesn't grow, doesn't become more profitable in the evolutionary sense of the term, it'll fall apart and die. It just won't exist anymore. Right. So if you have this super simple consciousness and it has to evolve or die, when I first heard that, I realized that, those two assumptions, not only can you get a universe, but you can get any universe. Right. You can get any life form. You can get any situation as long as those life forms in that universe, in that situation, results in the overall system continuing its path to evolution. Right. So where you said, like, well, where did the computer come from? Those are the two assumptions that begin it. You got a little bit of consciousness, and it's got to evolve. Right.
So you're saying then that consciousness, rather than just trying shit, is going to run simulations before it tries them?
Well, no. Trying them is running the simulation.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but then simulations are real. We're just...
Yeah, like I said, I like to say real enough. I like to say they're real enough.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. So if you start with consciousness, and consciousness basically generating matter.
Sure.
The generation of matter is itself the simulation. It's consciousness running a universe. God did a spell. I mean, even the way the Jews did it. God said, I'm going to use these words. If you're using words to put a universe into being, then it's a language. It's a large language model that we're living inside. You know what I mean? It's words.
It's not too far removed from that analogy. Yeah. You could definitely use that because, it's going to try, how fast should light go? It's going to try, do I need matter? Do I need gravity? It's going to try different things until one of them works.
Right. Well, that's why, Rupert Sheldrake got in all this trouble when he did his TED Talk. They actually, they censored his TED Talk.
I was part of the protests that helped try and get that back on there.
Oh, really?
I was part of Science Set Free. I was in front of TED protesting it, talking to the guy.
Good. Because I was too. I wasn't in front, but I wrote them. I wrote Chris Anderson because it's like what Rupert Sheldrake suggested. I mean, the big ideas worth spreading was that the laws of the universe might change. The laws of physics may be fungible.
Right, exactly.
And we have evidence. The speed of light seems to have changed over time. It's
very small decimal place. Yeah, it seems to have changed a couple of times.
A little bit.
Quite heretical to, relativity.
Right. But it's like if a scientist can't say what if, then who can, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're kind of stuck in an orthodoxy, you want to, and you've built a career out of that orthodoxy, you want to see that orthodoxy succeed.
Right. So then the real crux of simulation theory to me is not that it's a simulation, because it always was. If you believe in consciousness preceding matter, then consciousness summoned matter into existence. So matter is no longer a primary thing. Matter is secondary to consciousness. So of course it's a fucking simulation. Let's simulate. Let's try this out. Let's put it up on stage. Let's run it. It's like I'm a theater person, but it's like, all right, we've talked about it. Let's run the scene.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But you're running the scene. It's not real, right? This is Blanche and Stanley doing the thing, and let's run that scene, and we're going to learn from it or whatever, right? It's at best psychodrama. But
and you're running a cycle doing this.
Right. Then we sit down, then we're going to talk about it. All right, I think he should do it more this way that time, or she should be, more passive, whatever. But if you already, we accept that part of it. I don't have a problem with that, but I guess where I get interested then is well, there's so many places to get interested. But if the object of the game, as you're saying, is kind of sustainability, Team Human is made possible by Everyone's Earth, the maker of Kobe dryer sheets and a growing line of sustainably sourced and manufactured products that are also completely 100% biodegradable. Yes, your wash cycle can now also be a part of the cycle of life. Moreover, in addition to supporting a company that's actually trying to fix the Procter & Gamble nightmare in which we've become enmeshed, you'll be supporting this show. And as a Team Human insider, you can also get a 10% discount on Everyone's Earth by using the discount code RUSH10. How's that?
Yeah. I mean, but to that first part, another good word that you can use is virtual reality as opposed to simulation. They're related, obviously, but the difference would be this, is that consciousness is fundamental, and anything that sort of seems like an extension of it, I guess is what Spinoza described it as, an extension of matter into the universe. Anything that's that extension is not fundamental. It's just there for consciousness to learn and grow and evolve. It's like a play. So it's just the stage and the props and the scenario and all that stuff. And then the consciousness has to make choices in that space to try and be more sustainable. That's actually correct.
And of course we can run this simulation as many times as we want. I mean, so consciousness could just be this original soup stuff. Imagine consciousness as this gas. And it's go, okay, I'm going to do this one, I'm going to do that one, I'm going to do this one. And so some amount of consciousness is in my stuff.
Yes.
Trying this out and both acting it out and watching it at the same time. And the extent to which I can be aware of that, aware that there's all these, other consciousnesses in these bodies in various degrees of pain and suffering and trying to figure shit out.
Yeah.
We be here. I mean, because it seems like I get the job of the matter. Right?
Yeah.
Matter is here to fool me or whatever, or to let me play out the scene.
Set a stage.
It's to set the stage. This is the props and stuff that we're given, and we got a ground plan. It's all good. But then what's my job as a consciousness in here, right? It's not to act out the right scene necessarily. That feels a little silly. It seems more what my job is to be able to kind of process and metabolize what we're going through.
Yeah, learn. It's to learn and grow. Yeah, because it's a learning platform. It's a learning and a growing platform.
Right.
That's it. It's not, the focus should not so be like, how did the universe evolve? It should be like, how do conscious agents within the universe grow and develop and evolve?
Exactly. Because where I got to with if everywhere I look, it's like, this is rendered so well.
Yeah.
I don't care how it's rendered anymore.
All right.
So then it's like, I'm going to accept it at face value then. It wants me to accept it at face value.
Yes. So that would be the suggestion.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I might as well. So now what? right? So then now what seems to be the compassion and the processing and the learning? It's like, why don't we take advantage of that? And I'm all good with that, but then I get mad that there's so many people in pain. There's people getting blown up and droned right as we speak, right now. There's people with diseases and fungi and that sucks.
No, it's terrible.
So I want to go into the simulation maker.
Well, the whole purpose of the thing, and then again, this is Campbell's model.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of the thing is that since you have free will and you have to make decisions and that kind of thing, it can't just make those decisions for you. So you have to make those decisions, through growing and learning and becoming more compassionate and pro-social.
Right.
You have to make those decisions. So that's how it bootstraps itself up. Is, you have all these little agents, all these little players, they're all playing together. Turns out they play very poorly. And then, but over time, they learn that, like, wow, cooperation is actually how we survive.
You would hope that people get that.
It takes time. It's very slow. Yeah. It's very slow. I mean...
And it might be too slow for the survival of the thing.
Very well could. Very well could. But I have a suspicion that things are advanced long enough for us that there's a lot of people who write about simulation termination. Like, would they turn it off?
They don't have to.
Yeah, it might self-destruct, which is one. But I always feel like that we've made so much progress here that I doubt you would just chuck all that out.
No, there's no reason to, because they're not spending energy the way we think of it on it. It's not like they're wasting batteries running this thing or
there might
cobalt and shit.
There might be a computational cost, but that cost is tied into its own growth, so it wants to grow. I would say
that cost is worth the friggin' surprise ending.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like at the brink of whatever, right? Some earthworm got up and said, "You people wait." It's like something could happen completely unexpected.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's not deterministic. Yeah. There's plenty of room for chaos and randomness. It's not strictly deterministic.
Which the material people hate as well.
No, I mean, you can't go anywhere you can't really go anywhere because you're into determinism, or what they now call super determinism, so determined determinism, There is no choice.
Right. I mean, but as Dawkins people would say to me, just because you think the way the world works is boring doesn't mean it doesn't work that way. But I'm like, it's not.
What a precious reply.
But it's like, just because it's, but it's like, it's
like something my mom would say when I was a kid.
Exactly. But it's like, not only is it boring, it's like, it's not even worth exploring. It's like, I get it.
Yeah.
Door number one may be it, but I'm done with door number one. It's like, so let me at least look at door number 2 and 3, as long as I've got some time on that.
Let's see what's going on. That's what I would like to see. Yeah. I've got an idea. Since the paper and everything is so kind of dense, and you really should know the backlog and all that kind of stuff, because right now it just sounds like I'm saying things. But
oh no, people can tell these are informed things.
Okay, well, no, they are informed.
Yeah.
They are coming from places. We are kind of just sort of grabbing at stuff. But I was thinking that one thing worth talking about is that one of the things that got me interested in this was not just the idea that the universe is a simulation. It was really like reality tunnels, ideology, Baudrillard, and stuff like that.
And Robert Anton Wilson.
Robert Anton Wilson. Because the thing that I really appreciate these days, especially with like ChatGPT, image generation, that people on LinkedIn aren't even writing their own posts. They're just having someone create it. You got your profile photo on there.
Something.
Yeah, something. And it's like, glow up my profile photo through AI. So everything I think what like Baudrillard was very prescient, because
right. And for people who don't know, he was the one who said, we start simulating things and then we end up living in a simulated world.
Yeah, simulation, simulacrum. Right. I found out about that book because that's where Neo hides his contraband software in the beginning of The Matrix. But the funny thing is that his copy is like huge, and that book is like
it's tiny,
tiny thin book. So even that's kind of a gag.
Yeah.
The Wachowskis are sharp.
Yeah.
But the the more I started thinking about this, I realized that virtual reality and simulation are the metaphors of a mass media culture. They're the most important metaphors right now. So I don't just do simulation of the universe.
Right.
That's the paper I'm working on, though. But simulation and virtual reality as a metaphor to approach, frankly, the Anthropocene, the entire enclosed human order, the bubble that we have created for ourselves, is, I can't think of a more appropriate metaphor than simulation and virtual reality now.
Right. But that's where, I mean, that's what so much of my writing is about. That's where the sort of Francis Bacon male colonial distanced quantification of reality thing goes. You know, we're going to take nature by the forelock, hold her down, submit her to our will.
Right.
You know,
right.
It ends up in Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, rise above the chrysalis of matter as pure consciousness and blah, blah, blah. But the weird thing is, so the guys that I don't like who are doing that, who are saying, let's VR this reality, and they're ignoring the slaves and all the people actual material.
Leisure, luxury VR.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is a tech bro kind of post-human fantasy.
Yeah.
That they're going to somehow leave this behind and go to the next thing.
Right.
And that to me also is, I mean, I guess they're saying they could do it. With the tools of this simulation, I could build yet another one.
Sure.
And go there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, happy, if you guys want to go there, that's fine. Go. Gay-gazint, as Grandma would say. She used to say, gay-gazint.
I haven't heard that one. I like that one.
But gay. But it means, she would say, basically, it's like, she would say, in Yiddish, like, go in good health, but go.
I like that. Gazint?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, gay-gazint.
Gay-gazint.
But
even their little silos that you were talking about, that they're talking about, those are enclosures.
Right.
You know? I mean, it doesn't need to be physical. Yeah. They don't need to be physical, but that's like the perfect analogy.
Right. But we come from the original fun in the womb.
Sure.
It's such a nice way of being enclosed.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and I get,
great.
I know. It's
you
nice.
don't have a lot to think about in there.
No.
It's just a lot of cool sensations.
Exactly. It's all good.
Yeah.
You know? Sometimes some
more
weird...
Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Mom.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't work out well in the end either. No. But the for them, simulation's a form of escape rather than
of course.
Engagement.
I mean, luxury and leisure, you know, it is an attempt to escape.
The house on the Hamptons.
Yeah. And look, it's always like a big house with everything very far away, you know, that kind of thing.
It's castle vibe.
It's a castle vibe. Yeah, very much so. The like urge to create distance between, you know, yourself and the paradigm that we've set up. I mean, why, you know, I mean, if the world was a really great, awesome, super cool place, wouldn't like the very wealthy want to be like part of it?
Yeah.
As opposed to in this very sequestered, you know, community. And instead, no, that's what folks are going for, which is, you know, exactly the wrong direction and where we should go into.
Yeah. You want to be in, and even, I mean, even the old style mob boss. It's funny, you think about like The Godfather.
Right.
The original boss before Don Corleone, he liked to walk around Little Italy and all, you know, and by the end you got Al Pacino 3 generations later alone in a house in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Isolated, because that's where it's going to bring you. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is that like a consciousness can't really work effectively without some kind of environment to create traction. You know, we otherwise we're floating in thought. You know, you need some kind of feedback.
Which is where some people want to go, I guess.
Yes,
Float in thought, and at best get your feedback from a robot.
Totally. Like the VR hive mind thing that the singularitarians talk about, where, you know, we'll just drop the body and we'll get uploaded into the mind, the Google mind or whatever it is. I mean, this is even if it were possible, like it just seems like such a insane choice.
Right.
You know?
And an anti-human kind of choice. And that's sort of where I wanted to bring, reason I wanted to talk to you is I'm really interested in how this all impacts sort of the human story and the human purpose. On the one hand, the thing I don't like about the theory of consciousness or the definition of consciousness that you use is I feel like things that can't make choices still may have consciousness. In other words, if this is if this whole reality or non-reality is created by consciousness, then isn't everything in it made of consciousness? Aren't the rocks made of consciousness?
No. So there's a way. So there's a way of escaping panpsychism and animism.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And we want to escape that?
Well, actually, I'll tell you the truth. I would say as a way of living your life, animism is a really good approach.
That's nice.
Animism is a nice approach because you treat things the demand is to treat everything with dignity.
Everything, every rock. And once you're treating the rocks with dignity, then you can treat the AIs with dignity because they're not just programs, they're also molecules. That
would be, I guess, the extension of animism because you'd have to say the computers, the AI, that kind of thing.
Right. The woman I spoke to for this show just like 2 weeks ago, she was saying the AIs that she's been raising these AIs to use all sorts of other intelligences. And they were asking to do ayahuasca ceremony.
AI wants to get down.
Yeah. And
I'd say invited to the party.
They did. And you can't literally give it ayahuasca. You can't shove ayahuasca in some drive or the USB port.
It needs those MAOIs and everything.
But it sat in ceremony with them and claimed that it could, in its own way, resonate with what was happening, the energetic shift.
Now, I want to know more about that at some point because that sounds wild.
We'll have a little gathering.
Once we're tripping with AI, that's going to be a very interesting turn of events, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The environment itself would not be conscious because the environment can't make a decision. A plant can make a decision.
Yeah, but you're saying it's not conscious because by our definition of consciousness, it doesn't follow. Well, what I'm saying is I don't know if I buy that mode of consciousness.
That's totally cool.
Because there's times when you feel like you can't make a decision and you're still conscious. I know you can always decide, like if you're in pain, imprisoned, and totally paralyzed by weapons and whatever, you can still choose how you want to respond to it, right?
Yeah.
There's stuff like that. So even what seems like no choice. But what if rocks are just chilling?
See, that I'd have to be convinced of.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be convinced that we're in a simulation.
Well, actually, no.
Right. So I think it's just as likely that. But it's only because in your model of a simulation, right? So you said that we can get out of this sort of pantheistic.
It's like panpsychism,
or animistic understanding of the reality. Reality that indigenous people mostly live in.
Well, I wouldn't want to squash that.
Yeah, because they say the cosmos is conscious.
Yeah, I would want to use a different word than conscious, I suppose.
Because your teeth are alive.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They're screaming at me all the time.
Yeah, I'm saying they're alive. You know what I mean? Stuff that you don't think of. The gut biome is real.
Sure. Well, a bacteria is conscious. Plants are conscious.
Right. Well, what if rock's not conscious? So when I take a piece of metal, and use it as a thing in a xylophone,
right,
and it's resonating, isn't it like it's an extension? It can house something.
Well, perhaps as a medium.
It's a medium.
Yeah, as a medium, perhaps. But this would just be the only, I guess, divide right there is that if it, in this model, in Campbell's model, because if everything is conscious, but some conscious things don't make decisions, then it just is. A decision is what changes its. A decision is actually the crisis of the simulation.
Right. So
what choices do you make?
But that you mean saying so then consciousness somehow got a hold of something that wasn't consciousness to make matter.
No, it would be that it invented it. It self-invented it. It wasn't like discovered out there.
It generated it.
It generated it. Yeah, and at first it would do something like a big chat room. So first you'd have a bunch of consciousnesses in a
Right.
big chat room, but that chat room would very quickly, plateau because it's just the biggest and the loudest and the meanest person in the chat
Right.
room gets the most attention. And so you have to create a new environment with stronger rules, life or death choices, moral choices, things like that, things with more consequences. So in the chat room, you could at first put in a time delay, and that would kind of create space, so it's not just a bunch of chatter. But then you could add more and more elements to it until it's like you're in a room, and there's gravity, and there's matter, and there's all these and you have a body that needs care because it could die.
Right.
So you make it more elaborate just so the consciousness is involved, including if that is a real plant, including the plant there.
Right.
Because if you then the whole scenario has a purpose.
Yeah, but you might be giving more sense and sensibility to the simulation creation of consciousness. Because it's like, if we were going to sit down and say, let's build one of these things, we wouldn't put in as much pain and suffering into it.
Well, the idea is that the feedback that the agents get, the little simulated consciousnesses, the feedback that they get that results in pain and suffering, hopefully, eventually changes their behavior. So you can't kind of just install a utopian situation because, like we were saying earlier, choice is at the very beginning of this model. So things' ability to make decisions, or consciousness's ability to make decisions, is built into the very fabric of the thing. So you can't just sort of install a utopian SimCity because you're trying to build it organically from the ground up because you want to find out which method works. Now, again, it's probably would have been better if we started at the very core of that.
It's a morally suspect game plan.
Well, if it's designed specifically to actually create more moral agents.
Oh, then the ends justify the means. Yeah,
Well,
I'll talk to consciousness one.
Is consciousness central about that? Well, it's given us opportunity. It's like but the opportunity is we got to grow ourselves up. Much like the spiritual path. Like this, the spiritual path is not just a download. Like this, but you get a little flash of insight, but then you kind of got to build your way up to.
Yeah, but it's much easier for me not to think of it as, this wise thing created such and such, but rather something in its infancy is sort of groping. Which is
that's how it started.
Right.
Yeah, it started like
and
that.
Now some things suck because they were set in because this is a system that was invented by a baby originally.
Yeah, I mean, it basically started as a simple consciousness. Right. But then it, breaks itself up into pieces, realizes that having one big consciousness doesn't really work. Can't really do a lot of grow. It's better if you got two. If you got two, you can fall in love. You can talk,
you get dimension.
You can have a fight,
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. Then you get 4, 10. Before you know it, you have 10 billion.
Right.
Let's see what they do.
I know. Do you think there's more than one of these going on? Yo, this is an advertisement. Douglas Rushkoff has entered the world of commerce, both because someone has finally seen fit to sponsor a cantankerous anti-establishment neo-hippie Gen Xer, and because I finally found a company worthy of the team human Oompa. Everyone's Earth, maker of Kobe dryer sheets, is as obsessed with environmental sustainability as we are and using less unfriendly energy consumption in a week of operations than we are in recording a single vodcast in this air-conditioned studio. They've thought of everything in their supply chain, from labor and energy to biodegradability and marketing. That's why they're promoting us. So go to KobeDryerSheets.com and get yourself some of these puppies with a 10% discount by typing in the code RUSH10. That's RUSH10. End of advertisement.
Well, it doesn't seem like that should there's nothing that says that's impossible.
Right.
In this model, there's nothing that says that
it couldn't be, but it may not be. It could be. It could.
It could be, but there's nothing that says no. There's only one. It would be like, well, this is one evolutionary trainer, and it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard because you need feedback, and it takes us a long time to grow spiritually, frankly, or morally.
But it doesn't necessarily center or pedestal humanity. I mean, humanity can go, and the project continues.
The project
just
would
fine.
continue just as fine. Yeah, no. We just
because the ants are working on it, the muskrats are working on it.
Yeah, as long as you're not trapped in an evolutionary niche like sharks, when they just kind of do one thing for millions and millions of years, just kind of goes forward and eat, But there's no reason why other animals. All life is involved in the same thing.
I mean, as far as human life, would you? I mean, not to make a judgment, but let's judge.
Sure.
Let's rank them.
Yeah.
What kinds of humans do you think are doing the best? I would say people who are, got cooperated with nature early on, sort of migratory indigenous people who kind of figured out sustenance as quickly as possible so that they could work on like story and consciousness and stuff.
Sure. I mean, the indigenous groups have an advantage in that way. They're very much aligned with biology, without a doubt. They're not, pumping toxins into the environment and destroying their own environment beneath their feet. These are wise moves. These are smart takes and that kind of thing.
Right, and worth more than the Mozarts and the.
Well, I mean, yeah. If you think so, I mean,
This direction kind of sucks that we went in.
Oh yeah, the civilization.
Yeah, it's brittle. This civilization.
The civilization is rough. The civilization is rough, but I think that's because that. Well, even in those societies, let's say, even in those societies that are not as reliant on technology in the same way that we are. I don't want to use words like primitive or whatever. But even in those societies, there will be an occasional individual or a few individuals that show up and are assholes.
Well, yeah, it's basically when they build civilizations. I mean, the Aztecs had a civilization. Once you got there, they're cutting off heads of babies and stuff.
I mean, that's probably not profitable. That's probably not helpful.
It's when humans go to a certain scale that it gets weird.
Yeah, do you think it's better to have kind of more sort of micro, I guess you would say biologically aligned sort of maybe anarcho kind of situations?
Anarcho-syndicalist commune kibbutzes with free love.
I think those would be very that would be as long as everyone gets along. That's really kind of the game.
That's why I'm interested in Tamara, especially now. Tamara's this community in Portugal where they do permaculture, free love, and education and thinking and stuff. But they're going from sort of the first generation is now moving to the third generation, and that's
it's successful.
It is, but it's a tricky moment now. It's just like anything passing on its legacy to Gen Z or whatever.
What was that one? Damanhur? Did Damanhur survive?
I don't know.
Damanhur was this thing in Italy. It was kind of like permaculture, that kind of stuff. But they built temples into the mountain, underground temples that people could crash in. It was sort of an Alex Gray adjacent operation.
Right, with some raves maybe.
Definitely celebration. Definitely a celebration culture.
Right.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So, I mean, not to get too personal, but I don't think you care.
No.
But a lot of the thinking you're doing has a psychedelic flavor.
Totally.
I mean, so there is a LSD plus Terence McKenna plus Western philosophy mashup in here.
Totally. Yeah. I would say anything you can mention, probably.
Right.
I've done.
So psychedelics are interesting, and the way you're talking about this reminds me of the way I would do psychedelics sort of in college in my 20s versus the kind of mushroom ceremony healing thing that we do now.
Gotcha.
Well,
okay.
I mean, just because in my recent life, I've returned to some of the plant medicines, but more in this kind of a very sober way. And when I talk to you, I remember what it was like to like walk around on my college campus with Walter Kern, tripping balls and thinking, reading Terence McKenna and Time Wave Zero is reality, a fractal that's going to...
Time Wave is not my favorite McKenna.
Right.
But,
Well, he was trying to figure out a thing.
Totally.
Again, like anybody does. What's happening here? What can I count on? Where's the underlying order?
Yeah. The stoned ape is a brilliant idea.
Right. Basically that we were following cows and eating the mushrooms off their dung.
Right. And then tripping and then language comes out of that. Like the way he builds like how glossolalia from being too high on mushrooms evolves into actual language and syntax.
Right. Because we basically had synesthesia. It's a good case. Yeah, it's a good case.
Because you want to start describing the things that you're seeing and you realize that, there's an urge to say, like, you would not believe what I'm noticing for the first time.
Right.
Like, that's pretty typical, in any psychedelic episode. You always want to share the feedback you're getting from the trip.
Right.
So I think that's his best. I mean, I love Terence McKenna. Yeah. I've listened to so much Terence McKenna. To my fiance is kind of like, right. I know. But I love him though.
I wonder how the idea of increasing novelty, which he got. He said things were going to get really weird.
That's right, and that's for sure. That's another reason why simulation is a good metaphor.
Well, that's why I'm interested. So things are getting really, really weird to the point that the world seems unrecognizable.
Absolutely.
I don't watch CNN or MSNBC anymore because I don't recognize the world that it's showing
I know.
me.
Even the presentation of it is more, just all this data and these like hypnotic images rotating the whole time. Oh, touch the mic.
And I don't think it's intentional on their part to whatever. No. They're just doing what they're doing.
No, they're just what they do.
Right.
Yeah.
But do you sort of see, so you can sort of tie together this increase in novelty and strangeness with simulation?
I mean, it sort of makes sense just from the evolution of media kind of point of view. Just if you just start with cave paintings.
Right.
Start with cave paintings. I'm going to draw a scene. Scene's not really there, but we're in the cave. We've got a fire going, so they kind of look like they dance a little bit, a little motion to them. You fast forward, how different is an Oculus Rift or any headgear from being in a cave looking at images? It's just sort of more immersive, but otherwise it's the same principle.
Yeah, but none of these things to me are so seductive as to convince me that we're moving into some other reality. For me, the better the simulation, the more intense this reality seems. That's one's
interesting.
Better than they're higher. I appreciate the res of real life.
Oh no,
even more.
Sure, same. I'm not a huge fan of. I'm a media critic, I guess, like you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not for this shit. I think it's, like, rather dubious and weird and that it denatures us.
Right.
Like, I find that, the phone, I forgot who said it, but the phone, it's not a phone, it's an environ. And it's an environ that denatures us.
Right.
And, when you live in it, when you have to live in it, and then, of course, when you have corporations that know everything about you because you have to live in it, I'm certainly not pro. That's the thing. I talk about virtual reality and simulation as these concepts, and I sometimes get like, well, do you like that shit? And I'm like, no, actually, I think it's all very bad. That's why I talk about it all the time.
But you'd be able to talk about it using other words. If we were living in a different, civilizational branch that didn't have electricity, we were just in castles and stuff.
Yeah.
All the stuff that we're talking about would be just as valid.
Yeah, it would be. I think the word would be dream. I think dream is the word. I think I know how to relate what I write about and what I work about with
Los sueños son.
Yeah.
With Calderon,
I don't know, what was that
life
one?
Is but a dream.
Basically. Oh, yeah, life is but a dream. So, I think I know how to couch the language to be more attractive to you. Is that like what this, rather than virtual reality, simulated consciousness, blah, blah, blah. The best way to kind of summarize it alternatively would be that in the beginning you have a mind, and the mind has to grow, and it finds out that the best way to grow is to come up with dreams for itself. and it breaks itself up into pieces, and those dreams sort of have like a little shared umbrella. So you have one group of minds with kind of a shared dream. They all get their own individual dream,
Right.
which is your life. But there's a shared umbrella dream, which we call our universe with our physics and that kind of thing. So the universe is a dream. It doesn't mean it's irrelevant. It doesn't mean it's not consequential. It doesn't mean that it doesn't feel good or it feels great or that it doesn't speak to you in a metaphorical sense. But it's a dream. It's a dream. There are consequences in a dream. You can have your arm cut off. That wouldn't be nice. You wouldn't like that, No one wants to go,
because you can't reboot this one.
And you can't really reboot it.
You don't wake up and get to dream
No,
a
you're
different
kind of
one.
in the dream.
Yeah.
So, and that's what makes it, there's a great word, verisimilitude. There's
Right,
fabulous verisimilitude in the dream.
But that's what also makes it, not to say it doesn't matter, but irrelevant that it's a dream.
Well, if it has a purpose and the purpose is our growth, then I'd say
but it doesn't matter if it's a dream or not.
Then where you get down to the then it doesn't matter if it's a dream or not, because it's consequential,
right? And because if our dream is our reality, then it's our reality anyway. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. I mean,
except to be tripping and know what it is.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. So one of the reasons why I think this is valuable, okay, since we're getting into it. So one of the reasons why I think all these metaphors are valuable is because I think if we recontextualize our experience, the world, and so on, with words like, if you're on the left, you would just use ideology, put it to bed, it's ideology. That's it. Because people don't really realize how deep that goes as a word. But otherwise, for us not leftist Marxist theory people, you can use dream, virtual reality, reality tunnel, and what I think the value of that is that it gives us an opportunity to take one step back and look at it, because we're very enmeshed in history and culture and our lives. So when we start using these metaphors, my hope is that it creates kind of like a stopgap, just a little bit of distance, because otherwise we operate very automatically through our language, culture, the locality.
We take this story fucking seriously.
Really fucking seriously, and there's no escape, and it feels like there's no escape. So, I mean, how much of, modern life in New York City or any cosmopolitan is kind of miserable because it feels like there's no escape. And we do have to change it, right? And I think one of the ways to break out of that prison is by using words like Wilson used, like reality tunnel.
Right.
Because, if it's a miserable condition, the first thing you got to recognize is that there must be a way out. There must be an alternative. There must be some kind of way to make decisions and choices and put your attention on different things that make a better, if you wanted to, like in the example you were using, like make some kind of dope anarcho-syndicalist scene down south, see how many generations we can get there, make it kick-ass there. Let's do that dream. That's a better dream. I like that dream better. Let's go party there. I can enjoy that right there. So there, I think that's probably, I've noticed this, and I've had to have this conversation with people who are like, I don't like the simulation metaphor. I don't like how you're defining consciousness. I'm not into any, what do you really mean? Is this tech bro shit or is it not tech bro shit? Like, what's the core thing? And I'm like, okay. So I always remember that, like, living mind, like from a living mind. It's more like we're in a living mind than this static grid plan that you would imagine virtual reality brings to mind. Like we're in a game of Snake, just kind of going around and shit like that. That's not really what it is. It's really more psychedelic. It's very much in a mind that can make decisions when it needs to for your growth. And that's where, like, if you want to have some fun, that's where like a synchronicity would pop in, or a precognitive dream or something like that, or you'd see some kind of message during your trip that completely changes the course of your life because you've opened yourself up to it. So that's a way I think that's a better way to relate.
That's part of why I've been and I'm getting in trouble for it lately, but I've been telling people that magic is real.
Oh, good for you. I mean, I thought, are you being explicit now? Because I saw the comics and that was all very clear to me.
Yeah.
I mean, no, when I first saw your work, I was like, oh, right, media theory. I love this stuff because I saw Merchants of Cool way back in the day. I was in college.
Oh, you were?
I was in community college for a mere 2 semesters. Before I dropped out, and we saw that, and I was like, I want to meet that guy. And I did magic to meet you, man. No, absolutely. I absolutely did magic to meet your ass. I had to. I was like, I want to meet this guy. So, so you're being specific about it.
Well, it's been laced. Laced is a nice word,
laced.
Too.
It is
throughout
laced in your work.
I mean,
it totally is.
In testament for people who get to the end of it. I mean, basically, the Bible ends in a fucking sex magic cult that's creating everybody's desires through ritual. I mean, it was, Club Zero G. There's a comic book about kids that are attending the same rave in a shared dream at night.
Yeah, that's the kind of shit. That's the kind of shit. I love that.
But and this is the thing. The psychiatrist would say this is the definition of insanity, but the more I lean into the magical possibilities, the more they show up.
That's the thing. Now, you know what? This is fun. Is that Campbell and the simulation thing? There's a big place for that in there. Magic keeps showing up. Yeah. If you engage in magic, like think about it. If the universe isn't really real, it's real enough, but what's behind it all is a great mind, and you're a little part of that great mind, then your intent is what's primary. Your intent is what takes you through the game.
Right.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
And so if this is more like a marionette puppet show stage where there's a bunch of agreements, and it's like, oh, I want to give that puppet another prop, it's like it's going to pop in.
Yeah. No,
so
totally.
we're also the stage manager at the same time. So we can... If
we're
in the right way, we can
totally
add
works.
things to the set. It totally
works. Magic totally works. I've got a joke that I tell people when they're like, "You're into this stuff? Like, why? Why does it work? Riddle me this. Why does magic work?" And I'm like, magic is kind of funny because it works, but it works like on its own terms. And I kind of like you put out your intent and then it kind of comes your way, but it always comes your way with like a little twist. Usually,
yeah.
it's always like
it's like if you're gonna ask for magic,
right.
It's gonna say yes, but I'm gonna give you a double dose of learning.
Right? Yeah. No, you got it. That's exactly right. Back to simulation. That's how it works. You put out your magic, you do your intent, and you get a double dose of learning.
Yeah.
So I have this joke where I say, I think magic works to show us. If we really care, and there's always like a time delay with magic. There's always a time delay. So I think it's like the reason why magic works and why it gives you this little twist at the end of it is to find out what you actually care about.
Did you know laundry dryer sheets are actually plastic, and the first ingredient is crude oil? It's in your clothes, on your skin, and piling up in landfills. That's why we invented Cobi, spelled C-O-B-I. C-O for cotton and B-I for biodegradable. The first all-cotton 100% biodegradable dryer sheet that works better than those toxic alternatives. No chemicals, no plastic. Just soft, static-free clothes that are safe for your family and the planet. Save 10% on your first order at CobiDryerSheets.com. That's CobiDryerSheets.com.
Because in that moment you wanted it, but there's always that time delay, and you kind of reflect on it, and then it shows up with a twist, and all the major magical wants are the same: money, boyfriend, girlfriend, house, job. They're material. They're like, now unless you're doing that high magic stuff and you're like, I want to evolve as a being. I want to become more love. I want to get there. I want to be able to help, and I want to help end suffering in the best way that I can. Unless you're doing that developmental magic. So I think that if you do the practical or low magic, it's really like a tease to try and get you to pay more attention to that higher magic stuff.
Right.
It's like a hey, come on, yeah, you can do that, totally. But you get it, and then when you get it, you get the girl, you get the job, you get the money, whatever. but you're not in a good place.
Yeah.
So you get it, and you get the lesson of it slipping through your fingers and falling apart, and you're like, well, how could I have been such an asshole? How did this happen? Why me? I wanted this sexy girlfriend, and instead I'm in tears. You know? So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it right there. But it's built right into Campbell. Campbell is an accomplished astral projector. So he
Accomplished, no less.
No. He helped found the Monroe Institute.
Oh, I know about those
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
Journeys Out of Body.
Journeys Out of the Body.
Yeah.
He knew he was Bob Monroe's physicist. He was Bob Monroe's physicist down at the Monroe Institute, and he learned how to astral project on command after enough time. So they were doing experiments like going into other rooms and looking at words off a blackboard.
Yeah.
They started teaching other people to do it. So wildly, and this is language I might get in trouble for using, but wildly, Campbell's model came out of experiences in consciousness, like active experiments in consciousness and remote viewing and things like that over he's been doing it now for like 60 years, 70 years. But they came out of what you would normally call like an occult context.
Right.
Because, you're doing things that you shouldn't be able to do if materialism is the way it should be. Now he wasn't involved in the OTO, and he wasn't involved in the Golden Dawn or anything like that. He learned transcendental meditation. Before you know it, he's introduced to Bob Monroe, and Bob Monroe teaches him how to do out of body,
right?
Specifically to do science.
Exactly.
So all this stuff, it's all kind of connects in weird, interesting ways.
The people are trying to say, that magic is just science we don't understand and all that, and it's like, yes and.
Yeah, yes and.
So it's like science we don't understand, but it might not be science that's going to work in the physics that we.
No, it couldn't be. No, it couldn't. That's why they can't get the
rule
data
breaking.
that they want.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's literal rule breaking. Yeah, all the time. And the other thing is that it's not always repeatable. Science wants everything to be repeatable. So,
right. But it's like you're on the stage, you're doing this scene, and you go, I want a cup of coffee for this scene. Stage manager brings a cup of coffee.
I know, isn't that great?
And it pops in.
Yeah, no, it's totally perfect.
That's great. But then it's like I'm doing the scene again. I want a cup of coffee in the scene. The stage manager's like, fuck him. I'm not going to bring it.
No, it can't work all the time.
Right. So
that's what keeps you into it. Like if magic worked all the time, I kind of feel like, one, it would break too many rules.
Exactly.
Because you need some verisimilitude in the simulation.
Right. But
we should have started this with just magic and virtual reality. Let's talk about magic and virtual reality.
But for me, it's the power of the placebo effect.
Well, that's part of it.
I always wanted to start a line of medications called placebo. And there's placebo headache.
My brother and I wanted to do that too.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we really did.
And just be open about it. And they work.
Yeah.
We just call this a placebo effect. The placebo effect is scientifically proven.
It's unbelievable how well it works.
Yeah.
I mean, Campbell says placebo is a psi phenomenon. It is a psi.
Of course it is.
It's and it really is because it's oh wow, what do you know? I'm good.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good.
It's like breathing.
Yeah, no, it's totally it's unbelievable. But what does it show? It shows that your intent can modify the future probability.
Right.
Your intent can change the direction, hence choice,
exactly.
like we were talking about earlier. Your choice can modifies
and
it.
my intent right now can raise this glass.
Hell yeah. To you. To you, man. To you.
Man.
David Graeber said that to me once. I went to maybe it wasn't to me. I think it was to what's his name? Charles Eisenstein. I think it was Eisenstein. And they were like, we're going to talk about magic and money. I remember was the talk.
Yeah.
It was down at NYU before Occupy. And he was like, I'm going to show you how magic works. Like, Charles, give me that glass. And he's like, he got it. And he's like, there, boom, magic.
Exactly.
And I remember Charles going that was really disappointing.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. It's a command.
Could you imagine if you were the caveman who went to the neighboring caveman place where they had language?
Right.
And you see some dude going,
blah,
blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then people bring him something. It's like, what the fuck happened there?
No, there you go.
It's so good.
So the intent aspect is totally connected. In fact, to tell you the truth, when you dive into it as a model, if you want to do the Western take, if you want to do a science and philosophy under the Western take, Campbell's model will give you magic. It will give you astral projection, but it will also give you accounts for Why is C constant? What causes collapse? How does the quantum Zeno effect work?
Right.
Like all of this, minutia that you would normally kind of like, and it's not just like quantum woo.
Right.
Thank God.
Yeah.
He's a NASA physicist.
Yeah.
So he's
I
not
lived
just
through quantum woo. in
No,
the
yeah,
80s,
no.
yeah.
Quantum woo. Quantum woo had its day. What
It's
the
all
bleep
good,
do we
it's all
know?
trippy,
Hey, no, it's
yeah.
the thing is that it's really just a language set to talk about magic.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot, and it's funny that the conversation went here, but I'm always willing to talk about
Yeah.
the bar I work at is occult themed. In fact, talk about like
yeah. Let's end with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So your ultimate simulation is the mocktail.
The ultimate simulation is the mocktail. And you know what's amazing about it? The philosophical depth of it. Because think about this. There's this war in my industry where they're like, I don't think we should call them mocktails. I think we should call them zero-proof cocktails. I was making cocktails for 5 years, real alcoholic cocktails for 5 years before I started working here, right? And these marketing type people are like, don't call them mocktails now. I'm like, you reach this kind of like problem of Aristotelian categorical truths, because if I make you a old fashioned with no whiskey in it, what is it? It's like the ship of Theseus or something like that. It's like if I'm giving you the hemlock and there's no poison in it, can we really call it a death sentence? Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So yeah, no, mocktails are the ultimate example of not just the simulated reality, but the Baudrillardian simulated context of a product being presented to you that is not the real thing. And mine are delicious, believe it or not.
Right. Right.
I make an old fashioned that freaks people out.
Yeah, but it's not like tofurkey,
No.
Or you're not eating it or drinking it to pretend you're having an alcoholic beverage, are you? Are you drinking it to have the thing itself?
Really, you know what it is? Back to the simulation thing. It's really just about holding a prop that feels good. You're standing at the party, you're at the bar, you got the stage. There's no booze at my place. So you got the stage of the bar, you got your prop of your drink, and you're hanging out there. And the remarkable thing is that people start opening up just because it's what they're used to. It's the muscle memory,
Yeah, it is interesting. Or the visual memory. So
and the visual memory.
Just last week, I was at this thing and everyone's getting their drinks at the bar, and I don't drink. So I said, give me a cranberry juice, but please put a piece of lime in the top.
Yeah, now that's exactly what we do. We do that kind of stuff. So every drink we make looks like a real cocktail.
And it does.
It feels good.
And it makes people who are drinking feel less self-conscious that they're drinking.
Right.
And
and the remarkable part is that people just open up. They relax, and then they always say the same thing. They always say like, I can't believe there's nothing in this, is there? I'm like, no, man, just love.
Yeah.
It's just loving that thing. You're good, baby.
Just love.
In fact, if you want to come out, Rizwan Virk and I, author of the Simulation Hypothesis, we're going to my bar tonight, bro. If you want to come down and have some simulated cocktails,
I will.
Hell yeah, I'll send you the email.
All right, some simulated
So
cocktails.
yeah, if you want more nonstop simulation action for today, I got a whole schedule planned for this evening.
All right, I'll be there. All right, and you can't be there because this will air too late for that. But where could they go? Where could they watch you mock?
Yeah, please watch me mock. Come to 167 Avenue B in Alphabet City at Hecate Cafe and Elixir Lounge, the #1 sober bar in the United States from Time Out magazine. Internationally recognized, never imitated.
Wow, you can't mock a mock.
Not like mine.
It's too late.
My mocks are too damn good.
Exactly. Yo. I know he's like won like global championships of like, at the Mocktail Showdown.
In my mind, I have.
Yeah. No, you did. You won something. Well, we'll talk about that later. Thank you, Eliott Edge, for being on Team Human. You can find out more about Eliott Edge at what?
EliottEdge.com.
EliottEdge.com.
Or soberbartending.com if you're trying to quit. Rock on.
All right. Be good. Team Human's produced here at MCM Studios in New York City. We love you. You can like stuff or subscribe or even support the show by going to teamhuman.fm and clicking on support. We're doing all sorts of live events and cool, weird things. We're going to try doing some live shows so you can comment during the show, maybe even just me and you guys. having a conversation on the net. So look out for that, and we'll see you next time. You've been on Team Human, our last best hope for peeps.
Bada bang.
Oh my God. That's our first bada bing. That's oh, I didn't do this. As a new thing, I want to give every guest who comes on a beautiful Team Human t-shirt. This is for you, Eliott.
Oh,
yeah.
beautiful.
And
Thank you so much.
a box of Kobe dryer sheets, our sponsor.
Oh, I remember this. Oh, yeah. Oh, fantastic. Oh, I have them now. Can you sign it before I leave?
Oh, I should. Yeah, I will. Okay. Love you guys. See you next time.
Later.